here we are again. I want to talk about what has become, I guess you could say, one of the more controversial figures of the last year, or at least so far the year, as it has transpired. And I want to caveat this with a couple of things. The first being that normally I avoid specific name drops because I want to avoid kind of an accusation, I guess, of that I'm doing personal attacks against anyone. I don't want that to be the case, and I don't want to be interpreted that way. But also, I'd rather focus on ideas rather than the people that vocalize them. I want to stay away from ad hominem kind of things. But in this instance, I don't think there's a way around that. Because what I want to talk about is the Parkland school survivors, how they become much more vocal activists in the wake of the tragic circumstances that they endured. But specifically what I want to say about like David Hogg, for instance, is because I mean he's by far the most vocal or the most prominent personality that's come out of the wake of that, and he was in the news just yesterday because apparently he's been accepted at a California State University, or I guess a University of California is the appropriate terminology for it. But that he will be taking a year off, the way many people do. Many people take a year off between high school and college, but he's specifically stated that his reason for doing that was so he can be more participatory with the election process, because this is a midterm year. And there's been, of course, that same polarizing response to that, of that he either shouldn't be involved because he's a dumb kid, whatever, right? It's all been there. I just have a couple of thoughts on this.
But you forgot the homework.
The first is that I don't think it's a good idea to put a whole lot of stock into anything that he has to say, or the other individuals that were affected by the shooting, or the people that are affected by any emotional circumstance. But specifically in the case of him, what I see a lot of, because he's a graduating senior coming out of high school, and me looking back at my time in high school and then the transition period into adulthood after high school and then where I'm at now, that there was just a lot of stupidity. I'll say it like that. And what's interesting, so he's finding his voice, and I think that let's do some encouragement first off of that. You have a young guy who's been galvanized into I guess the spokesperson position of a specific issue. Now, being that he is A, young, and B, just not a lot of life experience yet, he says things that are kind of irrational. He says things that are not smart.
We're really trying to stay in the headlines by reacting to what the NRA is saying, trying to point out that what Dana's trying to do, I believe she's the CEO of the NRA.
But that's part of the process of coming into your own voice as a human being, as an adult. anybody that's my age, anybody that's older than me, they will definitely take time to look back and be like, man, when I was coming out of high school, or when I was in grade school, or when I was in college, or when I first started getting my first jobs or whatever, my first opportunities in, like, you did a lot of stupid things. That's why there's so much training at the beginning of a lot of entry-level jobs and stuff, is that you do a lot of dumb stuff. You say a lot of stupid things. You say things to customers you shouldn't say, that somebody with more experience comes along and has to mop up that mess a little bit. And that's as with years of experience and or decades of experience, this stuff still happens. That's something every single one of us needs to go through. And so he's going through that now. And if you watch all the footage of all of the interviews that he's been through and been in with MSNBC, CNN, Fox, or wherever, he's said some dumb things. He has. And I think that even he, in a private moment, might even admit it, that he's said some things that he should not have said, or that he's done some things that he should not have done, or things that he wishes he could have back, because he's a human being like I am a human being, and I've been there, and I know what that's like. So as a result, I just like to say, like, everybody just honestly calm down. He, in one interview, I think it was with CNN, said that he's grateful for all the people that are trying to bash him on the internet, because it's given him nothing but free advertising.
How disgusting they are.
There's the old adage that there's no such thing as bad publicity. There's only publicity. It's just exposure. But anyways, something I've noticed, this is going to be a little more, I guess, critical part, is that with every person finding their own voice in the public sphere, in the market of ideas, it follows a very similar trend as to finding your own voice literally, learning how to speak in your formative years, whether that's 2 or 3 or whatever age you were when you first started to make words. If you notice that children, when they're learning how to speak, they obviously don't have a large database of terms that they can just articulate. That's why they cry when they're first born. That's their only way of expressing emotion. And that's why they tantrum at young ages and toddler ages, because they don't have the capacity to express themselves in a fully articulate way. And as an adult or a parent, you see that, and sometimes it's just like, all right, time to put baby down for a nap, and you just let them cry it out. You just do that, because that's the only way. And also, as they begin to form words, though, they go from very small words. I mean, think like what all the baby books and stuff out there. They're very small, short phrases, 3-5 words at the most. Simple phrase, A does B, because that's an easy thing to gather. But then, as they do so, as they begin to learn, they hear, they reflect the language that's around them. And so every once in a while, you'll see on YouTube a vine of some 2 or 3-year-old dropping an F-bomb. And for some reason, it's funny, because you can see the kid is confused. Like, people are responding in this, like, how, like, don't say that and whatever, because they've just heard a word and they repeated that word. In a lot of ways, it's pretty clear to see with him as well as with others that, like, looking back, he's going to look back at some point 10 years, 15 years, 25 years from now, and he'll look back like, what a moron was I. And the same way that every other adult eventually does. I mean, just some of the decisions I made in high school, some of the decisions I made as a teenager and so forth. Like, I could look back and like, you know what? I mean, I wouldn't want anything back, like, no regrets, right? But at the same time, like, I should have done that better. You see that with athletes a lot, because they cut into a league and they got to make a name for themselves, so they stir up trouble with other athletes and stuff. And then when they get to that veteran stage 4 or 5 years later, and they're starting to take that leadership role that veterans do, and they'll look back and like, man, what an a-hole was I. Like, I should have been spending more time learning from these guys that were ahead of me instead of trying to one-up them all the time, right? And every salesman and every other forms of business, every craftsman, goes through that process as well of when, and I like there's all the cringing at older videos that YouTubers tend to do. They'll watch their old videos and then they'll be like, man, oh my hair, my I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I did those things. I can't believe how terrible my equipment was back then and stuff. And as a result, you get to see how far you've come from that small embryonic phase you were in up to now you're this fully fleshed out adult with thoughts and perspectives. And obviously as well, one of the things about high school graduation, one of these things about getting your first job is that you have kind of a permission to make mistakes. You're supposed to anyways. You're supposed to have this permission to do things wrong and then learn from those behaviors, right? I think that we would all do both him a favor and ourselves a favor to just back off a little bit, lower the volume, and just give David Hogg or the rest of these individuals that are younger, that are being thrust into the spotlight, let's just give them the permission to make those mistakes, to let them say things in the wrong way, to let them do things in the wrong way. Now granted, obviously, it's good to try and offer advice. It's a good thing. But if your advice isn't welcome, it's not doing anyone a service. There is not teaching, there is only learning. A person who wants to learn will find a way to do it, whether that's going to college and or if that's just reading books, getting a library card, whatever it is. A person who wants to learn will do it. So, I mean, just everyone, just relax, just chill out, and just give the guy a break, I guess, is really what it comes down to. Just give it a break. If he asks for assistance, if he asks for advice, then give it to him. But if he doesn't, then honestly, just keep it to yourself. Throughout the Bible, bringing it back around, Proverbs is full of cautions that a fool thinks his own way is right, but a wise man listens to many advisors. And one final note, it might be considered offensive that I'm referring to him and saying like that he's foolish or that he's a fool, because I know that those can be considered attacks. But obviously he's probably never going to see this. But if he were, what I would say is I would invite him to own that he's a fool. And honestly, any person who is self-aware will admit, I'm a fool. At the current point, like if I was to look forward 15 years back at me again, sitting in the same spot, I'd be like, man, what a fool I was. And any person who is honest about their perspective, honest about themselves as an individual, should be able to freely admit, I'm a fool. Now, whether that's you got 5 doctorates or if you have barely cut out of high school like he has, you should be able to willingly admit that I'm not. And I know that it's kind of important to, I guess you could say, his brand, to try and push that he is got this credibility and everything in order to speak authoritatively about the subjects that he's got. But honestly, it would be better for him and for any person that's his age or my age watching this video, it would be better for you to come in not as an authoritative, but as a learner, coming in from the perspective of someone without information looking to gather it from people with more information. If he took that perspective, he would be 10, 15 times more effective. And by the end time where he actually gets his chance to speak, they would be far more developed. So that would be my perspective. That I'm not attacking him. I'm not. I'm merely commenting, and I'm trying to offer a little bit of advice that maybe for use more than anyone, like to really consider. And if you like this video, if you've seen, I don't know if you've seen my other videos, but if you like this kind of content, feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment about your opinion about this stuff. Look forward to hearing from you and to interacting with you more.